Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to construct a pair of earrings whose primary design characteristic is multiple spirals that are integrated into dangling structures that are suggestive of forms that we see in nature. Let's take a closer look at the earrings. As you can see, the primary theme of the earrings is the multiple spiral forms. The two bottom pieces that we have down here are constructed with copper wire that is coated to give it the color. One of my personal favorite metals to work with, the niobium, and it's an anodized metal, meaning the color is applied through an electrolytic process, so the color is permanent. In another video, I'll demonstrate how to integrate beads within the spiral structures. Because it is my goal to not only share with you techniques that can be used to construct jewelry objects, such as these, but to also introduce ideas and processes that will provide encouragement for the exploration of your own individually realized design ideas. I'll begin the video with a brief discussion on my design process and how this design developed. The piece that I'm about to make started as a sketch in my tablet, and it began as a basic double spiral structure with a bead. This seemed like a good idea for a pair of earrings. I began to elaborate upon this simple spiral design. In my work, fundamental design elements such as spirals can be seen repeating themselves over and over again in never-ending variations. And because my process for developing new ideas always involves the exploration of variations on a theme, as I worked on the original design, new possibilities began to emerge. So I began to alter the drawing to further explore these new possibilities. What I had originally started out with evolved into something different, and it is this new idea that I decided to turn into a pair of earrings. To make these earrings, you will need to use standard chain link pliers, a pair of standard round nose pliers, a pair of side cutters to turn the spiral. I like to use curved nose pliers, and a pair of flat nose pliers would also be helpful to have on hand. The handmade coil making tool that you have seen me use in a few videos, a chasing hammer, and the steel block that you'll do your hammering on to hammer and flatten the spiral forms. For the earrings that you'll watch me make in the video, I use 20 gauge sterling silver wire, dead soft, round. Often I make my designs in nickel silver wire. I consider this my jewelry design sketching wire, and it has a wonderful look. You might want to consider going to a craft store to pick up some copper wire that's been coated. Or one of my personal favorites, niobium anodized wire, would be an excellent choice for these earrings. In fact, I'm going to make a pair of these earrings using that wire. A pair of safety goggles to protect your eyes, and a ruler or self-healing cutting board. And I prefer the self-healing cutting board to do all my measuring and cutting on. Finally, you'll need a pair of ear wires. I make my own wires out of sterling silver wire. You can also purchase pre-made ear wires from any jewelry supply shop. To make these distinctive looking earrings, the first thing that needs to be done is to cut up the wire. I'll need 2 lengths of sterling silver wire, 5 inches, to form each earring. So I'll need 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 5-inch lengths of sterling silver. 3, 4. Having cut the 5-inch lengths of wire, I square off the ends by sanding it in that fashion. Oh, beautiful. In one shot, I've flattened out all of the ends of the wire. Let's do it to the other side. Perfect. So the first thing that needs to be done to construct these earrings is to make the coil that holds the 2 spiral units together. Before I actually make that coil, it's important to point something out. The 2 spiral units are held in place with a custom-sized coil that holds them tightly together. You're looking at one of my handmade coil making tools, and it might look a little unusual since it has 2 lengths of wire sticking out. Because I used 20 gauge sterling silver wire to make the earrings, and the coil needs to allow 2 lengths of 20 gauge wire to pass through, the handmade tool includes 2 lengths of 20 gauge wire. If the earrings were made of 18 gauge wire, then the handmade tool would include 2 lengths of 18 gauge wire. And I'll wrap the sterling silver wire around those 2 lengths to form the coil. Let's make the coil. After positioning the wire into the hole, I bent the wire over and I push it into another hole that I drilled into the dowel. This will hold the wire in place as I wrap it around. It'll prevent the wire from turning in an annoying way. 20 gauge sterling, 20 gauge nickel. My side cutters get right up against that wire, trim. Now, using flat nose pliers, I work down the length of wire that might be sticking up by squeezing this. The turning action with my pliers polishes and flattens the sterling silver, giving it a smooth, shiny surface, which is very similar to when you burnish the metal. Okay, the coil looks good. Now, pull that wire out of the hole that was locking everything into place. Remove it, and it's going to be a bit tight. I remove the coil from the coil forming tool, and the next thing I'll do is trim off the excess metal. I line up, I have a cut end there. I like to keep the cut ends on the same side. So I line up my pliers with that cut end over here, and I snip, holding it in place so it doesn't fly out. Now I have the 2 center coils that are needed to tightly hold the spiral units together. We're also going to need to form the hanging unit, which consists of an eye loop and a coil. So why don't we do that now? Get the 2 of them prepared. Using the coil forming tool made with the heavier wire, this time I'm going to insert the wire and let it extend approximately 1 3/4 inches beyond the edge of the dowel. I insert the toothpick in there, effectively wedging the length of wire in place. And we have 1.5 inches sticking out. Bend my wire down and then begin to spiral. It's important when you do that kind of winding to leave your wire attached to the main spool of wire, because you need to be able to grab onto something. If you cut the wire down to exactly the size you need, it may be impossible to form the coil. Okay. That is nicely formed. Like we did with the simple little coils, take your flat nose plier and kind of work it around. Okay, that's what we have so far. Let's remove the coil. Now to form the eye loop, let's use this as a measurement. The eye loop is formed 1/4 of an inch from the top of the bend there. I begin to form that eye loop. So let's do the same here. Position the top of the coil on a ruler line. Then, at the 1/4 of an inch mark, grab the wire and bend the wire out at a 45. We have the coil. We have a 1/4 of an inch length of wire from the top of the coil to the bend. Now, with round nose pliers, I position the wires on the long length of the bend. To form the loop, I bend the wire over and around the jaw of the plier. Using my curved nose pliers now, I'm going to form a tight coil. Twice around. That's good. Trim off the excess, and with my flat nose, I work that wire down. One nicely formed hanging unit. I'll make the other. Having formed both hanging units, if you'd like to guarantee that the parts of the hanging unit are lined up properly, you can reposition it on the 14 gauge wire that you form the coils on, and make sure that the wire that moves up and ends in the loop lines up straight with the 14 gauge wire. Then you can be sure that more or less everything will fall correctly when you assemble the parts. You know, one other little detail. In forming the loops that we see here, you want them both to be the same size. So what you might want to do is mark the spot on the pliers where you'll position the wire to form the loop. This will guarantee that you make them both the same size. The coil parts. We have the hanging parts and the wire. Of course, I'm going to make my own ear wires out of sterling silver to attach to the finished earrings, just like I did here. You can make your own. I have a video out on how to do that. Or you can go to one of the craft stores or jewelry supply shops and buy finished ear wires that are safe to put in your ear. To start creating the spiral units, I begin to form the top spiral by holding the 5-inch length of wire, the flattened end of the wire with my tip of the round nose pliers. Then I bend the wire around. But to facilitate the process and speed up time, let's do it on all four. Nice. See what we have now. We have 4 pieces of wire where I began to form the spiral on just one end. Let's follow through with the individual spirals on the ends. So now with my curved nose plier in hand, Grabbing firmly with the pliers, I push in that fashion to form a nice, tight spiral. Okay, 1, 2, 3. This is a specific number of times I go around, and that is 4. At 4 complete turns around, 1, 2, 3, 4, there will be approximately 3 inches of wire in length left. I want the end of the inner facing up, like you see here. Now that we've made all 4, what I'd like to do is flatten out the spirals a little bit using my chasing hammer. That removes the raw look from the metal and transforms it from a round piece of wire to a nice hand-worked shape. And I don't just hammer away, I look carefully at what I'm doing, even observing the little marks I make to make sure they're falling in the places that I want, creating the look that I want. It's all about paying attention to the details. Beautiful. I can't do any more forming of the spirals until I add the coils. And here's what I'm talking about. Position a coil. I'm going to make this unit right here. And it has 1 coil attached. So, we take another one. Position the coil. See what we have? Having done that, now I'll spiral the other end. Grabbing the tip with my round nose plier. Begin to form the spiral. Let's turn it up. Watching carefully the way the wire bends and turns, and I'm making sure that the walls are up against each other. Wind the spiral until each unit measures exactly 1 inch from end to end. The next thing that is done, since I could easily get at that spiral, I'm going to forge it down a bit. To form the next part of our assemblage, insert a length of wire into the coil. See what's happening? You get the idea. We're making another spiral. But, and this is important, before you begin to spiral, also attach the hanging unit. There I go. 1 hanging unit. 2 hanging units. With all the parts in place, I'll proceed to form the top spiral. Using the round nose pliers, grab the tip of the wire and begin to work it. I've switched to the curved nose pliers now. And I'll turn and turn the wire until that spiraled unit is 1 inch in length. We are getting close. Let's check it out. Good. It measures exactly 1 inch from end to end. Position it on the block and forge the remaining spiral, being careful not to hit the coil. One earring is finished. I'll do the same thing on the second. See how I check my measurements? And it's correct, 1 inch. The next thing to do is attach the ear wires. I have 2 pre-made sterling silver ear wires that'll attach to my new earrings. And I line up the earrings so they face the right way. I insert the ear wires so that the earrings fall as mirror images of each other when worn. Those 2 spirals face each other. Those face out, and the ear wires flare out as mirror images of one another. That tells me when you put them on your ears, they're going to both be facing the right way. Concentrated on that coil that I am wrapping, and I wrap my wire firmly 2 times around. When making ear wires, I like to trim off the excess on the inside. So I turn the wire until that excess is facing in. I place my side cutters up against the small coil that I just formed and trim off that excess. To polish these, I think I'm going to put them in my tumbler for about a half hour. That'll burnish the surface to a nice, brilliant shine. The earrings are finished. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. I had a lot of fun making it.